All right, so today we're going to talk about propositions and truth values. So let me start with just a couple of definitions and kind of take a few moments and make sure we have a good understanding of what we're talking about. A blank makes a claim, either an assertion or denial, that may be either true or false. It must have the structure of a complete sentence. The magic concept here is called a proposition. Proposition. So a proposition is a sentence we make that was either true or false. We're just claiming something, and our job is to figure out if it has any value or merit. Any proposition itself has two possible truth values, and this being either it's true or it's false. And a way to organize this information is a truth table. Is a table with a row for each possible set of truth values and the propositions being concerned. Oops. The negation of a proposition P, so let me write that out. So negation of a proposition P is another proposition that makes the opposite claim of P. So if I do the opposite of, if I have P and I want the opposite of it, then we call that a negation. So visually, what are we talking about here? Kind of do a quick truth table. So here's my proposition, and here's the negation, so not P. So either a statement is true or false, and then the opposite of it would be what not P would represent. So if the statement itself is true, not P would have to be a false statement, and if the original proposition is false, then the opposite it would have to be true. Okay, so let's take a look at an example of how this actually would work in a statement. Find the negation of the proposition, Amanda is the fastest runner on the team. Write its negation. If it's false, is Amanda really the fastest runner on the team? Okay, so we got a couple of ideas that we need to look at here. So our proposition P is Amanda is the fastest. Okay, so not P, and this is what we're writing, is the negation of this. Amanda is not the fastest. Okay, so now that we have the negation, let's do a little analysis here. We're told that the negation is false. So we're told that not P is false, which means logically then, by default, that P would have to be true, and thus in context that means that Amanda is in fact the fastest runner. Okay, so that's all that really means. Okay. Let's see, the blank of a proposition P, not P, has the same truth value as P, just when you thought it was getting interesting. Okay, so this is called what's called a double negation. Double negation. Something that in English we seem to like to do a lot of. It's where we have the not of a not, the opposite of the opposite. It's like the friend of my enemy is my friend, sort of thing. So what we're discussing then, so we have a proposition, we have not P, and so the double negation would be not P. Okay, so let's go back to P. Well, either P, the proposition itself, is either true or false. So not P, the opposite of P, would be false or true. So a not P, so the opposite of P basically puts us right back to where we started off with, that it's either true or false again. Okay, so let's take a look at an example of this. After reviewing data showing an association between low-level radiation and cancer among workers at a Oak Ridge National Laboratory, a health scientist from the University of North Carolina was asked about the possibility of a similar association among younger workers at another national laboratory. He was quoted as saying, "My opinion is that it's unlikely that there's no association." Wow, okay, so we got to take a second and think. What is he actually trying to say? So does a scientist think there's association between low-level radiation and cancer among the younger workers? Okay, so let's go back into what the scientist says, and let's clarify what his proposition is and what the opposite of the proposition, the negation of the proposition is. So he says, my opinion is that it's unlikely that there is no association. Okay, so let's back up in and let's say that his original proposition is that it's likely there is an association. Okay, so what would not P look like? Not P would be it's likely there is not an association. Okay, so in other words, we're saying this if the proposition is I think there is, then the opposite of thinking there is thinking there is not. Okay, so then let's actually get to what he said. So his not P. So now we need to undo the last statement. So it'd be unlikely there is not. So unlikely there is not is kind of like what we did with the double negation. That means he's going back to the original proposition, which means he actually thinks there is an association between the low-level radiation and the cancer among his workers. So does he think there is one? Yes, he does. Okay, propositions. So these sentences that we've been using, we're going to go a little more detail on how we construct them. Okay, propositions are often joined with something called a logical connector. And these are words such as and, or, if, then, etc. So, for example, your proposition might be, I won the game and your consequence would be, well, it was fun. So verbally, I might connect it like this. I won the game and it was fun. Or I could say I won the game or it was fun, so one or the other. Or more likely, we could throw an if-then in there and say, if I won the game, then it was fun. Sort of associating these two statements together. So there's multiple ways that we can connect these ideas. Starting with the idea that if we're given two propositions P and Q, the statement P and Q themselves are called conjunctions. Try that again. Conjunction. Okay. And that conjunction is, it is true only if P and Q are both true. Okay, so let me do sort of a truth table here and outline sort of what the different options for P and Q are. So these are two different statements, and we're going to look at whether P and Q are both true. So let's talk about what could happen. Well, P and Q could both be true, and so if P and Q are true together, that means they're true. Okay, But what if P is true and Q is false? Do they match up? They both share the same truth value, and the answer is no, so that's false. What about if P is false and Q is true? So that's another, they don't match up. So this would be another example of false. And if P is false and Q is also false, well, what about the conjunction, the and between the two? Well, they both match, but going back to the definition, P and Q is true only if P is true and Q is true. So this would also be false. Okay, so let's evaluate some of these truth statements. The capital of France is Paris and Antarctica is cold. Is that a true statement? Well, let's look at P. P being capital of France is Paris. Capital is Paris. And then their other proposition is Antarctica is cold. Okay, so we've got two different statements. Are they together true? Well, Paris is the capital of France, and Antarctica itself is cold. So because P is true and Q is true, that means P and Q, so together the word and make it also a true statement. So yes, we can get away with saying the capital of France is Paris and Antarctica is cold. Both have are true statements. All right, second statement, the capital of France is Paris and the capital of America is Madrid. Can I make that sentence valid? Well, our P is that the capital is Paris, which we already kind of talked about in the previous example. Capital is Paris. And then our second statement is capital of America is Madrid. Okay, so Paris statement's true, but the Madrid statement's false. So P and Q together, they're both not true, so that's a false statement that I can't say both of those together. Okay, just the word or. Or itself has a couple of different meanings depending upon the sentence it's used in. So we have what's called an inclusive meaning. And we have an exclusive meaning. Okay, so inclusive means we include it, so it's either or both. Exclusive means one or the other. So either either A is true or B is true, but not both are true. Whereas the inclusive definition, we could get away with it. When we deal with logic statements, so whenever we're saying we're using logic rules, we assume that or is inclusive.